It all started now. This day's a turning point in my life. The day I begin living my life from the inside out. And I am transformed. I am transformed.
Hello and welcome. My name is Maria Mirkovich, your host for Family Today. This show is about family dynamics. It's for parents, grandparents, and young adults. How many of you have great relationship in your life? And how many of you are suffering or struggling with addictive, destructive relationships? Today, I have a guest. Her name is Jen, and she is struggling between her husband-to-be, David. She's going to be married in 3 weeks. And she met Michael 6 months ago while she was having a dinner with her friends, and she never ended that relationship. Now we're going to take a view at this clip.
Hi, David. What's going on? Oh, you working late again tonight? Oh, that's okay, because the girls called me up. They want to have dinner together, so I'm just going to go with them. All right, honey, don't work too hard. See you later. Hi, Michael. Listen, David just called. He's working late, so let's meet for dinner tonight at 6:30 at Park Cafe. Oh, no. No, I'm not ready to tell him just yet. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. I'll see you later. Love you. Bye.
In relationship addiction, the person becomes a drug, just like a drug addict needs his substance to become high. So we depend on these people. We start being insecure, we start lying, we have doubts, we have all kinds of issues around this. And now, here are the ladies that want to share about the story in a Park Cafe. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Jen, what happened when you walked into that restaurant?
When I got there, the first person I saw was Sue, and I got really scared and nervous, and I didn't know what to do, and I kind of froze because I felt so guilty.
So you didn't see Michael?
I know. I saw Sue first.
Oh, my God. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what happened then?
I just, like I said, I was like a deer in headlights. I really didn't know what to say or do because I didn't expect this at all, and I didn't even know where Sue came from or what she was doing there. I was confused.
Did you know Michael was gonna meet with Jen, or?
That's a good question, because let me tell you, I had a suspicion on Michael, and he was acting out really strangely past couple of weeks, and he was coming home late, and I go, you know what, I'm going to follow him. And when I got to the restaurant, I saw Jen, and I wanted to rip her hair out. I got there before Michael.
But why? Because did you have a notion that she might have an affair with Michael?
Yes.
You had that insight.
I had that insight.
Nobody tipped you on it. You just had that insight.
I had that insight. I saw the actions that Michael was,
So that was purely from an insight.
Correct.
Yes. And so what happened? You walked towards her. Did you do anything to her? Did you slap her?
Well, we saw each other, and
did somebody stop you from acting out? What happened? What happened?
I went to confront her. Bottom line.
Yes.
And that's when Jen.
Yeah, and I put my hands up because she did she confront.
Did you see that
I went up to her, pointing at her, and I was angry.
So somebody stopped you. A bartender? Was it a bartender that stopped you?
The bartender there
I think you
at
shared
the bar
that with me.
Stopped us. He's like, listen, ladies, you're getting too loud. We need to settle this outside. And
what did Michael do?
Well, you know Michael.
Yeah, I know Michael all right.
So then nothing really hurtful happened. You didn't abuse yourself physically or anything like that?
Well-
did you manage to escape that?
Yeah, well, because I saw she was really going after me, and with a vengeance. She had fury in her eyes. She was not going to back down until the bartender.
Well, relationship addiction is like a drug addict being addicted to substance abuse. It's the same thing. It's detrimental and it could result in death. It's very problematic. So that's why people need to look at this issue and heal from it. One thing that comes to mind is the inner child work. But next week we will have Michael and David sharing their side of the story. Also, we will have Dr. Drew Pinsky, who is an expert on addiction and recovery. Now we have a guest. His name is Tom Hessman.
Well, thanks for having me, Maria. Thank you.
Who does influence a child more? Is it the mother or the father or both?
Well, initially I'd have to say the mothers. The child is reared within the mother for 9 months, and interestingly enough, a child does absorb, and it's an open system, a child, whether it's a baby or a newborn or in utero, and they do absorb what types of feelings that the mother is having. And when they come out into the world, one of the main ways that a child feels safe in the world is to bond to the mother. If the mother has enough room emotionally to bond with the child, and if not, then there's a sense of not feeling safe in the world. And one of the things that all human beings go through is what's called narcissistic wounding. Because when they in a spiritual sense, they come from a place where there's all love, all attention. If one believes that, and I do, one comes from a place where there is complete love, joy, attention to whatever being is in what do you call heaven or the spiritual world. And now when a person comes in and becomes incarnate, they come out as a child, and now they're looking for the same thing instinctively. So they have a spiritual instinct to look around for that which can give them all love all the time.
Right.
Unfortunately, since we're human beings,
Yes.
we can't do that. So, strangely enough, the automatic thought that a child gets when it goes, "Mommy, Mom," looks for mommy, and the mommy's like, "Hold on, I got to get the phone." Now all of a sudden, the kid's looking around, going, "What's wrong with me? Why isn't that coming to me?
Right.
Why isn't that attention and love coming to me?"
Yes.
And strangely enough, from what I've read and talked to people about, is the child goes, "There's something wrong with me." Automatically.
To himself?
Yes.
When he's how young?
Even pre-verbal.
Okay.
There's a confusion that goes on.
So right
and then
there.
eventually the confusion turns into what's wrong with me.
Okay.
Because automatically the child's looking at that mother or father figure as a god.
As a god.
So to speak.
Okay.
So
All
when
right.
that god doesn't pay attention or give them that love that a god can, all
They
of a sudden,
think they're defected or something is wrong.
And it's nobody really knows why that they go exactly to that spot, But initially, when we're born, we're supposed to be as a whole piece, a masculine, a feminine, a yin and a yang, and all that stuff. And what happens during confusion is that there's an automatic switch into what's called fight or flight. Or there's a confusion. So there's fear, and automatically part goes to run, part goes to fight.
Okay.
And to try, now that's the initial splitting of the self, so to speak, which is the wounding of the self, of the child, so to speak. And that can continue on for the rest of your life if you're in a family system that doesn't support, doesn't love, or does the exact opposite, which is attacks, ignores, wounds, drinks, whatever disease they're involved in, the child is now into fighting and flighting, and they take a role to try to control that, or they live in one side or the other of it.
I see.
So basically what you're saying, Tom, is that when you have this initial confusion, the balance that was once there is basically broken, and I mean, how long does it take to repair something like that, or does the family realize this, or most families do, or do not, or?
I don't really think many families realize it, because interestingly enough, you have to study more for your driver's license than to have a child.
That's true.
You know? And so a parent doesn't necessarily know about psychology, doesn't necessarily know about fight or flight, doesn't necessarily know about spiritual wounding, doesn't necessarily know about all these things, and doesn't necessarily know how to put it all together. And we're not born with an instruction manual, unfortunately. It would be nice if we were, but somebody once said, he gave me this life, show me how to live. I don't know how to live. So there's a lot of good information out there now on how to reintegrate oneself. And like I said, along the way, if that happens to every single human being on the planet, and now it's a question as they go forward, what is the parent like in the relationship with the child? What are the parents like in relationship to the child that allows the child to get back together, so to speak? But on the other side of the spectrum, there's those family systems which cause even further disruption, further escape into fight or flight, and further escape into roles of being in the family.
Which leads me to my next question. What roles do children play in a family?
Well, it's oddly enough, in a quote-unquote dysfunctional family, the roles are rather rigid and rather defined.
Okay.
And from family to family, they're the same. So roles, there's basically three main roles with a fourth role that's kind of like, is not as strong, but is there. One is the hero child.
Okay.
That's the child who overcompensates, who gets good grades, who is the socialite, is the athlete, who does all the great things.
I think I was the hero child in my family.
Well, I was the hero child.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's too much pressure. Anyway, the other roles, one is the scapegoat. Now the scapegoat is the one that takes the brunt, the abuse, the put downs. Now,
I was also the scapegoat.
maybe you're all these, who knows? But
We haven't even got to the fourth one yet.
yeah, the third one yet. We're not even at the third one. Maybe you're all of them. Who knows? Maybe you got the bad package, so to speak, not the bad family package. So.
But there's a gift into it too.
Yeah, there are gifts
There
later
are
on.
gifts.
There could be gifts in all these roles.
Yes.
Now, as far as the scapegoat is concerned, there's the acting out scapegoat,
Okay.
which is
In
the one
what
that's
way?
if you have a
Acting out.
daughter who goes out and pierces her entire face and
Ay.
spikes her hair or whatever, and everybody's yelling at her,
Yes.
she becomes an acting out scapegoat. Then there's
Okay.
the victim scapegoat, which is the one that's kind of like this and just takes it.
Right.
And doesn't act back, doesn't rebel back, and just takes it and takes it. And what happens is it takes it in on itself, the person in on itself. You're a piece of whatever. You're no good. You're no
You're
this.
crap.
And
You're-
exactly.
yes.
And
And
all,
the child takes it in.
Exactly.
And believes it.
Exactly.
Deep down inside believes
they
it.
turn it on themselves.
Now, a lot of people would say that they don't know any of it, even if they were said that they had this kind of childhood. They will not remember that as adults.
Well, you have to be willing to.
As a victim, they don't see themselves as a scapegoat or the victim.
Well, a lot of
And
people.
isn't it true that sometimes we have to learn all of this stuff and then see it in our lives?
yeah.
If you don't, then you don't. You don't know, and you don't know better.
Well, a lot of people construct they construct a mindset such that saying my family was okay.
That's right, and that comes from the ego side, no?
Sure, absolutely.
The ego that is not authentic, and they formulate, and that's what they think. They think that they were okay in the family, even if the family abused them, hit them, or
Sure,
whatever,
sure.
whatever the deal is. But they will not see it that way. So how do you see it? You
Well,
know?
usually
Like
it takes.
people out there might question that.
It usually takes a lot of pain.
Aha.
So people, if they're numb and walking around and
Numb.
they're managing,
Yes.
and they're not in extreme pain,
They're okay
you know,
with that.
I sprained my leg. Okay, it's okay. I can walk around on it.
Yes.
I broke my leg. I'm not walking around on it.
That's right.
It hurts like hell. I got to get a cast. I got to look at it. I got to fix it. Other one will just go on and on and on. Oh, it's just kind of bothers me. Same thing with psychic pain, emotional pain. If it gets too bad, you go, oh my God, what is going on here?
And sometimes a crisis would lead a person to look inside and look for answers, and that's how they get their answers.
Sure.
And some people never look inside. They died not knowing.
Yeah, basically asleep.
Yes.
And most of the population is like that.
Sleeping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's not, you know, as being a spiritual person, you look in the Bible and you see, you know, Jesus said, this is the way of God and to heaven is narrow, and few can pass through the gate.
That's right.
So it's almost like if you're beaten down far enough, you can find who you really are, because you know the other way didn't work.
Right.
Or some people can take, you know, parts of who they are and really kind of know that, but then there's a whole other part they won't even look at.
Okay.
And they can function. And they function well enough, they think that they're doing well. There's also the taboo in the family that you're not supposed to criticize your parents.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know that one.
In essence, there's that taboo set upon the child, and now the child goes, well, I can't see my parents as defective.
That's
because
right.
that blows my whole view of the world.
Yes. So I must really be bad.
Exactly.
For even thinking that.
So that's why it's hard for the child to see what might have been perpetrated upon them. It took me years to see my father for who he was and how he was. When I initially started looking at him, I go, oh, no, that's that. And somebody kept saying to me, your father never grew up. And I'm going, yeah, sure he grew up. He was the president of a company. He did this, and then as I looked farther back and I got farther away from my childhood, I looked back and I said, and I know what my responsible reactions would be as an adult. I looked at how my father reacted to stuff and did things, and I go, geez, he didn't grow up. He was a teenager.
Yes.
Through his whole adult life. Yeah, he did things that were
spiritually, emotionally, and mentally.
Action-wise, doing irresponsible things. Oh my God, you know, not taking into account other people's feelings.
Now, not your father, but maybe another person that will fit that description, you know, of not growing up. There's a lot of people out there that, what would be an example of that, you know? An example of irresponsibility, a small example.
You want an example of irresponsibility? My father used to drink and drive with kids in the car.
Okay.
Not really a responsible thing to do.
I know a lot of people that do that. But they will not, they are in denial about drinking. They think they're just drinking just a glass here and there. That's they don't think
it was also
actually in some point in time it wasn't even that big of a deal. It's not as how it is now, you know.
Right. Now,
so,
yeah, exactly.
You know, it's also that time frame where people
are more aware of it.
I believe it's more out there.
It's more out there.
Yeah, you lose your license for 3 years, et cetera, right. But as a more subtle example, my father would go off and play golf all weekend.
Okay.
While my mom was back taking care of us, and the house was in disrepair.
Okay.
And I look back at that and I go, I'd never treat children like that. I'd never put them in a place where things were in disrepair. I'd want them to have the best things around them. And my father just ignored that because he didn't want to deal with it. For him, it was too much pressure. Work, family, too much pressure, so he ran.
Tom, have you ever encountered, now you realize these certain patterns in your life, obviously you became aware and whatnot. Have you ever encountered someone that probably had similar experiences to you and said, I'm not going to be the parent that my parents were, and initially they were also blind and were doing the same pattern as their parents were?
Oh, sure.
You know, I mean, what kind of, where does that resonate? And I mean, have you ever like told the person, listen, I know it's a tricky subject, but you know, your expertise.
Sure, I've seen, I have friends who are playing out the roles of their childhood still to this day. And I have one particular friend, I'm like, buddy, this is what's going on. Right. Your father's doing this. Same thing you did when you were in Little League. You know, you're living at home. He's controlling your life. Why you do this? I can't get out.
But
in his mind, the separation from his father would mean his father would hate him. And to this day, he's still looking for his father to love him when his father won't love him as much as
But does he acknowledge that? Is he aware
he
of that?
acknowledges it, but he doesn't do anything about it.
Oh, okay.
Because he hasn't hit enough pain.
Okay, because a lot of people do not acknowledge that. If you were to point that out to them, they will, again.
Yes, but also it's a
Sure.
touchy subject, and you
Yes.
know.
Sure, I run into people like that. They're like, no, that's not the way it was. I'm like, okay. You know, and I just back off because
No,
they're
my
not
dad
ready.
was a loving father. My dad did this, and this.
And they probably
They're
were on
not-
some level. My father was a great guy, a very loving guy,
Of
but
course,
he had major flaws and wounds inside of himself. He didn't know what the hell to deal with. He didn't know what to do with them. He didn't have the tools to deal with them. And now, fortunately, in our society today, we have lots of tools to deal with what's going on in our lives and what's been passed down from our parents, luckily.
How are these roles damaging the kids? You know, when they take on the roles of a family.
The other roles I wanted to tell you about, one was the
Oh,
lost
that's right.
child.
That's right. That's
The
right.
one who finds solace in their own little world,
Okay.
where they go off in their room and they make things perfect,
Yes.
or they have a fantasy world that they deal with, but it's usually away from the chaos or whatever's going on in the household.
Yes.
So they're living.
These are
their
all
life.
survival mechanisms, you know.
So they're living their life basically through fantasy.
Well, not necessarily fantasy. Sometimes it's control. It's making their world manageable,
Okay.
and while the rest of the world outside of their little space where they go off to, unmanageable. So they try to. It's a lot of it has to do with control and perfection. It's what I can
Control and perfectionism.
Well, for the lost child. It happens
Oh, for
with
the
everybody,
lost
but the
child.
lost child,
Okay,
I think,
okay.
really relies on that because they create their own world,
Yes.
separate from the family.
The lost child, is that, could that be a third child in the family? Is it?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a family where I was the hero, my brother was the scapegoat, my sister was the lost child, and I didn't know that until I went away to a rehab for
Yes.
dysfunctional families, and
Yes.
they spelled it out, and I'm like, geez, it really is true. And it's all about survival, and it's all about trying to get what you need in order to survive and to live. And people take on different roles in the family relative to the parents. Then it's a big game starts to be played. It's really interesting, actually.
Yes.
Now, is there a hierarchy on these levels, like the hero and the scapegoat, the four levels that you gave us? Is there certain ages that usually, encounter, like, the oldest is usually the hero?
Actually, you're right. The oldest is usually the hero.
Okay.
So I was the oldest, and I was the hero.
But I was the middle child, and I was the hero. But
Oh, so that's-
but when my brother came into the world,
Yes.
he automatically became a scapegoat because my father saw him as a rival for my mom's attention and love. And all of a sudden, he had my mom all the time, and now all of a sudden, the baby has my mom. And my father, I think this is what happened, said, "There's my rival. I have
Okay.
to keep him down."
Okay.
So he automatically was put in a scapegoat position rather than going, "Here's my first son. He's great." Because a lot of fathers do that. They see, "There's my son. He's, this is, my mirror. This is who I am," but in a child form.
So-
But I think that's what happened in my family.
So basically, in that combination where you said the father is very happy for his son, would that child take the hero role?
I think
his,
so.
or, for a he or she.
I think in that space, a child becomes exalted. And exaltation leads to a place of higher ground, a place of saying, "Well, I really am good."
A little cockiness
and
and
and this is where he finds his connection to
But
his
it's a
father and
false
mother.
self. Is
Yeah.
that like a false self?
It's part of a false self, yeah, sure. Everybody's got all this inside of them, and if you level them out correctly, I think you have a whole person.
Yes.
A real, completely integrated person.
Yes. Level it in what way?
Well, say for instance you're a hero child. You're always out there doing stuff. You're hanging with the cheerleaders in high school and playing sports and doing this and doing that. You never have any downtime. You never have any time to yourself.
Now, what does that? Oh, to myself.
Exactly.
Downtown means a time for myself.
Exactly. And normally people, as we know as adults, you go out there, you do your thing, you need a little time to yourself. Now, who's taking up that role in the family? That's the lost child's job.
Oh.
They're taking their time to themselves, and that's all
Yes.
they do.
That's all they do.
Exactly. So it becomes a.
But the hero doesn't get to do it.
Doesn't usually. I don't think, because they're always doing, and succeeding, achieving.
Yes.
And that part isn't really a part of that introspective
Yes.
part. Kind of gets put on the back boiler, where per se maybe the lost child isn't out there achieving and doing to a larger degree. So it's I think
So it needs to be balanced.
exactly just
When
like,
you are aware of it. And if you're not, you're in trouble.
yeah, it's usually.
Yes. So what are the examples of a healthy child?
Well, a healthy child is somebody who can be emotionally vulnerable, can communicate.
Now, what does that mean?
Emotionally vulnerable.
Yes, for the
When
people
they're-
out there that might want to know that.
When you're feeling bad, and
Okay.
what do you do with it?
Yes.
A healthy child would go to a healthy adult and say, "This is how I feel sad," and the adult would say, "I hear you," which means
And it's okay to be sad.
Exactly.
Sit and
Exactly.
feel your sadness,
It's
which a lot
okay.
of us like to run away from.
Right, exactly, and a lot of people do, because
Yeah, oh, yes.
most of what
Is that the escapism, and then we form the addictions? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's where we escape.
Sure, this becomes
So,
the hole in the soul.
the hole in the soul. Okay.
And so what do we try to fill it up with?
Yes.
We try to escape, because if you take somebody away who shops a lot and all of
Yeah.
a sudden they don't shop,
Yes.
you put them in a chair and say, "Don't shop." What are they going to do? They're
And
going to
sit
be
with your
like, "I want to
feelings.
shop, I want to shop, I want to shop."
Yes.
Then all of a sudden they're like, I feel like hell. Why do I feel like hell? And if it allows it to calm down enough, it usually has to do with a hurt. An old hurt, a relatively new hurt, a repeated hurt. And John Bradshaw, who wrote a lot
John
about
Bradshaw. I went to a lot of his seminars.
yeah, who
Yes.
wrote a lot. Then he wrote
And
a lot
I
about
went to the Meadows in Arizona, so
Right.
I took some of the workshops.
and he wrote a lot about the inner child. And
Yes.
he said one of the ways in which we heal from where we are as basically disjointed or disintegrated people.
Yes.
With different parts that are not part of the whole yet, is we have to grieve.
We have to grieve.
Yeah, the losses of our childhood, the losses growing up through. It's interesting. It's even with adults recently in New York City after 9/11, there was a large, almost an epidemic of depression in New York, because I think with the trauma, people didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know that they should talk it out. They didn't know they should cry. They didn't know that maybe they needed to move out of the city or go to a calmer place or whatever. And what happens is all that energy, all that stuff, all that pain, they just shut it down. And when you shut down your emotions like that, it can cause depression.
Depression.
Oh, and there was a huge epidemic of depression in New York City after 9/11.
So again, we only have about 5 minutes. Again, what does, I know this is a superficial because, we only have 5 minutes.
Sure.
What does a healthy child look like? If you could just...
Braids and pigtails. What do you mean? As far as like, look like emotionally? You look
Yes.
like acting wise?
Yes.
I think a healthy child is someone who's calm.
Calm?
And their life isn't run on fear.
Okay.
It's a life run on, I think things are going to be okay no matter what.
No matter what.
And
it's okay to be afraid. It's okay
to have all your
feel
feelings.
Sadness. It's okay to have all the feelings.
And if I don't conquer the world, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
It's a sense of well-being regardless of their circumstances around them, regardless of what they're doing for a living, regardless of how they're doing in school, regardless. It's just that I am okay as who I am.
I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. Next, we will have a great show for you and your families to enjoy. So until then, I am Maria Mirkovich. Goodbye for now, and arrivederci. God bless.